I love this conference because I think it focuses on the issue that defines us as agencies in a lot of ways, which is growth. The creative work, which is our passion, is wildly fleeting. You can have the biggest hit in the world, you wake up the day after it launches, maybe you got a little bit of a champagne headache, and the unspoken text or email or phone call is what's next. There's no place for resting on your laurels, so that's very fleeting. So really the only brand that we end up working on and knowing that we're going to be with for the long haul is our own. And thinking about ourselves as a brand and thinking about the way growth relates to that brand is a huge, huge priority for 72andSunny, and I think it should be a priority for everyone in our industry. What really excited me about 72andSunny is that based on this work and some work they've done with Xbox, I felt like the agency had a very, very clear premise in the marketplace. I think that's one of the most valuable things an agency can have in terms of from a new business standpoint. When you know what you are and you actually acknowledge that you're not for everyone and you start narrowing in on why you exist. There's this virtuous circle where you have your premise, it's clearly stated, you articulate that to clients, and so they kind of know whether you're for them or not, and then you're able to attract talent based on that premise. So this circle here is the thing that we at 72andSunny spend more time focusing on than anything else we do in terms of the health of our company, is we kind of mind our premise and make sure that we are honoring it in the work we do, in the way we work with our clients, and the way we recruit talent. The thing that was an interesting thing we learned through that period of time is we couldn't measure our business anymore based on our P&L, because our P&L was a disaster and we didn't think we were a disaster. And the other reason is that we were living in kind of a false time. We knew that when we looked at our balance sheet, it wasn't really reflective of what the next 10, 20 years would look like for our business. And so we started measuring our company differently. And this is the most valuable lesson, one of the most valuable lessons we learned, because it's really easy to kind of like fixate on your P&L and think, and kind of that's your scorecard for how you're doing. But that can be very artificial. Sometimes it's raining money, it's really easy. Other times you're doing great stuff and it's really hard because of the clients you're working with or the climate you're operating under. So what we started doing is thinking like, okay, let's look around and think about our core strength, like an athlete does. Doesn't matter how much you weigh or whatever, it's like what's your muscle mass? And let's look at our company in terms of core strength, and every time we had a little bit of money to make an investment, we would invest in someone who we thought would build to our core strength. So if we started off with 20 people in our core strength and grew by the end of the year to 26 people, then that would be a huge advancement. That'd be a 30% growth in our company, even though that wasn't showing up in our P&L, because we kind of figured that eventually, if our core strength were strong, then our performance in other ways would be strong as well. The other thing that we did was we started to set creative metrics. Financial metrics were not fun, and it was so volatile you couldn't do it for us, at least in our position and our kind of fragile state at that size and that time. But we did control the work we were doing. And so we started saying, okay, we're an agency that makes brands matter and culture. How many times this year can we make it go boom? Our clients come to us because they want it to go boom. Okay, so that's a kind of a very honest proposition we have with them. How many times can we do it? Can we do it 4 times this year, where we just like grab the cultural microphone and get people to pay attention to Bugaboo or Benetton or K-Swiss or whomever? I'm not suggesting that finances aren't important. They are. Without good finances, we're not sustainable. They're really important. But I just think if we only look at our finances to use our health, what we're doing is we're putting a lot of the control outside of our worlds, and we're ignoring the things that we can control. We work in a business where we're not in control. It's frustrating. It's kind of what gets us out of bed in the morning too. It's this weird paradox, but it's something that it's important to set metrics that you personally can control. So all of a sudden, being an upstart was good. We went from being, I think, ahead of the market, which sounds really cool and sexy, exciting, except when you're almost going out of business, to being on market. And so one thing that we learned from that is we're very conscious of where we are relative to the market. We, as an organization, have made the decision we always want to be ahead of the market. That's part of our proposition. I'm not always sure that that is the best financial proposition, but it's certainly, for us, it works. So in terms of looking at your own businesses, my only suggestion is just be conscious of where you are relative to the market, because things, when the market changes, it changes where you sit and what your opportunities are and how you talk about yourself and how you present yourself. I think that there became a rise of like creative agencies being valuable in categories other than tennis shoes and soft drinks. So Crispin started working with Microsoft and Kraft. Wyden started working with Procter & Gamble and Chrysler and getting into some categories. And they didn't just do a good job. I think they crushed it, both of those agencies, in those tough categories. And it helped trigger a shift in the perceived power of creativity in Fortune 100 companies, of which we were huge beneficiaries. Our agencies are these very unique, individualistic organisms. We have our own cultures. We have our own belief systems. With each other, it's important that we believe that we are different than the other guys. And our daily experiences are different than the other guys, so there's a lot of truth in that. But my observation is clients, search consultants, and other agencies tend to thin slice the industry pretty quickly, and they put you in buckets. And if you have kind of an individualistic orientation, getting put in the bucket is an uncomfortable feeling. But it just is. There's no point in resisting it. That's just the way the world works. And what ends up happening is that when your bucket starts doing well, then you tend to do better too. So we get put in the bucket with Wyden and Kennedy and Crispin and Droga 5. And so because they're kind of the most like us in a lot of ways, they're the ones you're like, oh wow, what do those guys do? You're kind of looking at them. And that competitive juices starts flaring. But what we learned during this period was that when those agencies did well, when Chrysler came out and you're like, wow, Detroit, that's a great idea. Or when Crispin came out with our Microsoft work, or we see what Droga did for Puma, that's good for our business too. So I just encourage you to start figuring out what bucket you're in, getting to know the people in your bucket, observing them, and see, perhaps you'll find what I found, that your business will track to a certain trend, that what's good for them ends up probably being good for you.
Hi, we had a question from the webcast chat room. Can you give some examples of creative metrics, how to measure and how to reward staff for achievements?
Okay, so in terms of creative metrics, probably the easiest way to measure that for us is when we break outside of our industry press. So, we just did a thing for Call of Duty that was written about in USA Today. Or when we did the Unhate campaign for Benetton over the holidays, and we were in Time Magazine and Huffington Post and CNN and all the British dailies. That's a moment where we're like, okay, if we're about making brands matter in culture, we're going to use culture caring about this thing. We always want to be recognized by our industry. I think our industries are when you look at a publication like Ad Age, they're the most discerning arbiter of your performance. So that's very important to us. But when we talk about these type of metrics, it's like, can we get in time, and just to get a broader audience outside of our immediate industry.